I'm Anurag. I work as a developer relations lead at Locofy. And in this webinar, I'll show you the best practices when it comes to generating extensible code from Locofy, and also how you should extend your code. So this will be the agenda of our webinar that you are seeing over here. So first we will look at how you can generate extensible code with Locofy. Then we will look at the general folder structure that the industry recommends. Then we will see how you should actually think about components and how you can use logic app-wide. So basically how you can refrain yourself from writing the same set of lines of code multiple times. Finally, we will see how you should fetch the data and how you should use it in a lot of places without fetching it every time. And we will do it very neatly as well. And I'll show you the standard way of doing it, and then I'll show you the best practices way of doing it, and you will yourself notice the differences between both the methods. Finally, after this session, I will have a Q&A session following it up, where you can ask your questions, and hopefully I will be able to answer them. Okay, so let's start with the first item on the agenda. So this is a Figma file that I have prepared beforehand. So in the first session, or in the first part of the video, we will see how you can generate extensible code with Locofy. So all the three cards that you are seeing over here, they will look similar to you on surface and in terms of the overall like UI. However, they are structured very differently internally. So internally, let's go over to the first card over here. And the first thing that you should be noticing right now is that it is using groups instead of auto layouts. And another thing over here is that it's not following a proper naming convention. So we have frame 2, and then we have frame 1, frame 5435. Now I'll show you why this is important in a bit, but let me just show you the responsiveness first. So as you can see, this is not responsive. Now we move on to the second card, which is like a much more real world scenario. So probably your designs look something like this, unless you have a great designer. So this is a common design file over here. And over here, you can see that it is partially using auto layout, and it is also using groups. So it is somewhat responsive. You can see like somewhat this is slightly responsive over here, but this is not completely responsive, okay? Because this is not using auto layout in all the child layers. And the naming convention over here is not very readable as well. Finally, we move on to the last one. And over here, we are following all the best practices that Figma and Locofy both recommend. So the first thing you will notice over here is how we have been using auto layout throughout the entire app. And the second thing that you would be noticing over here is the folder structure. So inside vehicles container, we have location wrapper, and in availability wrapper also, we have proper items placed. Okay, so this is not just placed anywhere, and because we are using auto layout, this will be responsive as well. So let me quickly show you. Okay, as you can see. Now, to understand responsiveness in Locofy, there is a simple approach to it, and that is if it is responsive on Figma, it is going to be responsive on Locofy as well. So over here, let me show you the code that we are seeing over here. I've already synced it with my Locofy builder. And over here, you can see that if I go to the code, so you can see that it is using absolute for the first two cards, whereas for the last card, it is not using any absolute position. So if you have any basic CSS background, you should know that absolute positioning basically means that the design is not responsive. Whereas using something like flex means that the design is responsive. So over here, we already saw that this was responsive on Figma, whereas these two were not responsive on Figma. And this is translated by Locofy here as well. Now, I also mentioned the naming conventions over here. So let's quickly see this over here as well. So let me first change the my settings over here, because in Tailwind CSS, you cannot see the class name. So if you are using something like CSS module, and you can even change pixels, rem, and m, but I'm choosing pixels over here. Okay, now if I go back, you can see that the naming conventions, that the file names that we have over here in the layers has been basically picked up by Locofy to generate the code here as well. So you can see all of these class names like frame1, availability, 5435, 334. So all of these class names are not actually readable by a human. And if you compare it with the last card that we have, you can see that we have proper names over here, like property card, decal container, as well as location decals. So this is because the names that you write over here will actually be translated into the code as well. Finally, there is another interesting thing I wanted to show you. It's with this tagging property. So in this webinar, we won't dive deep into how you can tag elements, how you can tag buttons. But essentially with Locofy, what we have done is we have added article tag on the frame, on the outer frame of the card. And for our text icons, we have went ahead and we have added a text tag as well. We have not done this with the other two cards. So if I go back to the code output, you can see that we have a span, a paragraph, and an article tag. So this is how with Locofy you can easily customize your code generation, and you can gain granular control over how your code is structured and what naming convention it is following by using the Locofy plugin. Now, finally, in this section, we were told that we will discuss generating extensible code. So the last part of this particular chapter is creating a component. So if I click over here on the property card, you can click on component. You can choose the name. So this, I think this name sounds nice. So I'll choose this and I'll click on create. Now you can see this component has been created, and I can even add some value props to it, as well as style props. So this is how we will conclude the first chapter of this webinar. Now let's move on to the folder structure part, which is where we will dive deep into the programming side of things. So this is the app that I already exported before this webinar, and this is again generated by Locofy. So Locofy is already following the best structure when it comes to generating front-end code and placing it in relevant folders. So let's just go over it, and then we'll also see what are the folders that you need while you're extending the code. So over here, you can see that Locofy has generated a pages folder. And in the pages folder in Next.js, it is a reserved work. So whatever you write over here will automatically be converted to a single page. It has even generated a public folder, which is kind of a reserved work in Next.js as well. So whatever you place over here will be considered a media asset that you can use in pages and components. The components folder here is actually something that is opinionated, and like people oftentimes, they instead of using components, they use UI. However, it is an industry standard to use components as the folder name. So Locofy is already using the best practices over here, and it has created this components folder and placed some icons over here. Now, what if you want to extend your code and you want to write some logic over here to, for example, fetch the data? Now, what you can do is you can write a simple fetch function over here and start fetching the data, right? Now, what if you again want to do another fetch operation saying a logging page. Now the issue is that you keep repeating the same syntax every time over and over again. So because we are using React over here, and this is a client-side operation, what we can do, we can create another folder called hooks. And in the hooks folder, we can create a hook, for example, called use fetch. And in the use fetch hook, basically we can write the logic to fetch the hook, fetch the data, and then we can over here simply basically perform an operation something like this. So we can write use fetch, and then we can get the data from over here. Now, this is for the hooks, right? Now, what if we have already fetched the data from our hooks and performed complex operations on it? And now, for example, if I'm on the sign up page, I want to pass this information to another page or to another component. For that, what we recommend is actually creating a context folder. So over here, you can store your regex, your decoil, or context KPI files. Now, the reason these folders are separate is because as your apps will grow, you will quickly see that you will have multiple hooks. So you will have hooks for use auth, for example. You will have hooks, you will have context KPI, for example, say users cake. And then you will have some another context for you can say something like use data, for example, or something like that. So the entire point over here is they should be ideally isolated, and both the folders and the files that you will be storing over here should ideally be used on the client side. Okay, so that's an important point that you should keep in mind. Okay, now finally, these two folders are for client side. Now let's look at the server side. So in server side, again, you can create a folder called server, and over here you can add files that you will use on the server. Now, why are we creating this folder over here and isolating the logic when we can directly write some complex logic over here, right? So in this page, for example, let me just quickly show you the problem that we will face. Okay, so imagine that this is like a random function. Okay, so let me just write a random function over here that will return some data. Okay, in real world, of course, this is not so simple and this will be very complicated. Now, what we are doing is we are basically returning the auth data that we have. Okay, now this will, whatever value is over here will be returned, right? And then this will be passed on to the sign up. Now, whatever, for example, just imagine that this is a function that will check the user's authenticated state. Now, the issue is you will actually, for example, this is usually when you do user authentication, you don't restrict yourself to a single page. So you go to login page, and now you again over here, you want to check that, hey, how am I, is the user logging or not? So ideally, or what normally people do is that they copy paste the same code over here, they check the user authenticated data, and then they pass the data back to the page. Now you have multiple pages over here, and over time, you will see that it becomes not only redundant to basically write the same thing again and again, it also becomes pretty hard for you to maintain, because say tomorrow suddenly you are changing your library from say Superbase to Auth0. Then you have to go in all of these folders and you have to rewrite all of them. So what you can ideally do is for all of these server operations, you can actually copy this. Then you can go to server and you can create a file over here, say auth.js, and you can export it. Now, if we were to get the same thing over here, it will become very easy. So over here, we can just write auth, and we will get this function. Over here, we can do the same. So all your server operations, it is recommended that you create a folder called server and you place it over there. Now, the benefit of this is, for example, if tomorrow suddenly I want to change this, I can just write 4, and all the apps that need this function will actually get this updated value. Okay. Now, finally, you will also be formatting and you will also be performing some miscellaneous logic in your app. So for example, I want to create a function that will say return a gate to me. So let me just show you. Say I have like a gate object over here and I want to like format it, okay? So what I can do is I can do something like d is equals to, and I want something like, say, for now I just want local string, okay? Now I'm using the string over here somewhere, okay? Just in this example, we will again dive deep into all of this in the next section. So for example, you're using it over here. Now it will be pretty weird, right? If you are using local string on this page and say on sign up page, you are using local time string or something like that. So usually in your app, you should maintain the uniformity by using the same formatting and same whatever configurations you have. So for this kind of things, what you can do, you can again create another folder and you can call it utils, or you can call it helper functions, whatever you prefer. So I usually call it utils. And over here, you can place something like gig, JS, and whatever logic we were writing, you can write over here. So you can write something like gig formatter, and this will get a prop. So let me return something like now. Okay. So let me write a very simple function right now, and then I'll show you the practical benefits of creating a separate folder and moving it over here. Yep. So right now I have this function, and let me actually return this. Okay. Now what I can do over here is I can simply call this function. So I can say something like this, gig formatter, and I can say pass new gig over here. And now if I run this function, right, let me go back to my app. So over here, you can see that finally this is working. And so right now this is showing you this format, right, that we have over here. Now, the benefit of this is, for example, if you go to the sign up page, I can use the same function on the sign up page to format my gig, okay? Now, suddenly, say tomorrow my client is saying, oh, I don't want to use local gig string. I want to use just say local string. Now, instead of going into all the pages and again doing the formatting, what you can do, you can just go to the utils, you can go to this file and you can change it. And now you can see that it changed, okay? So over here, we saw 4 folders basically. We saw context and hooks, which are client-side folders. So whatever logic you have in client-side, you can place over here. And in server, we saw that you should place your server logic in over here. So functions that you plan on reusing multiple times. So for example, getting the stake of the user, getting the aux stake of the user, or getting fetching a list of things that a user has, basically any database query that you think you will repeat every time. All of these items should be placed in server folder. And the util folder is mainly for some miscellaneous logic that you plan on repeating every time. So usually over here, we don't place any client-side or server-side code. Usually we use utils folder to basically write formatting code and like a gate formatter that we saw over here, and other sort of operations. So something like image resizing, a function to resize the image, or to add a all cat to an image, something like that. So all of these functions, they are best placed in utils folder. So with this, I think it was pretty clear to you, the folder structure and how you should create your folders. The idea behind this is that if you keep doing this for a long time, and if you keep creating projects, even in the smaller projects, if you are creating this folder structure and you're maintaining it across different projects, it becomes very easy for you to revisit these projects and start to develop them more. Because if you don't have a proper structure in place, and if you create say 10 projects with 10 different structures and you revisit them after 3 months, you will go crazy figuring out like what the hell did I write 3 months ago. So that's why we follow the same structure and a coherent structure across different projects. Now, let's move on to the third section, which is the rethinking components and also using the logic app vibe. So this is much more of a hands-on session. So over here, I just showed you some demos, right? Now over here, we will see much more like a practical use case of this. So first, let me just close all of these things. Yep. So the first thing that we will see is rethinking components, and then we will see using as logic app vibe. Okay. So a common argument, like a common benefit that a lot of developers will tell you when it comes to using components is the reusability of it. And they are not wrong. Components are meant to be created so they can be reused. And this is one of the core benefits of using React. However, they also supplement your performance, like they boost your performance when you use component. Okay. So over here, I have created a simple page that you can see, which is the scroll.js page. And scroll.js page is very simple page, okay? So it has three components: post layout, button, and finally a post component. So in post component, what we are doing is we are wrapping our app with post layout, and we are passing some children to it. Now the children is actually expected by this post layout component, and this is rendering the children. Over here, another thing you will notice is that we have added use effect in all the three components to measure that how many times each component is being re-rendered. Now, why they will re-render is because over here we are performing some actions. So basically, I have added an event listener over here that whenever we are moving our mouse, you will see that it will update the value. So over here, you can see that this is updating the progress with the new value. Now, before I show you how many times or how many components are being re-rendered because of this, I'll again show you the layout structure that we have a post layout in which we are performing the logic. So let me write over here that over here we are performing the logic. Okay. Let me write over here. Yep. So over here we are performing the logic in this, and then we have the child components over here. Okay. Now, before I show you the output, I want you to take a second and basically think like how many components are being re-rendered. Is button re-rendered? Is this re-rendered? Or is the parent component being re-rendered because of this? Okay. So I hope you are all correct, because right now I will just show you the difference. Okay. So let me clear it first. Okay. Now you can see that when I'm moving my mouse, only the progress component is being updated. So only the post layout is being updated because it has the progress component. However, you will notice the children component are not being updated, which is exactly the point I wanted to show you. Now, this is because it does not have any props over here that will use this progress or something. So that's why they are not updated. However, if I move the logic over here, right? If I move it to over this function, and if I remove this, now over here, because these are like direct children of it, now if you go back, you can see that when I'm moving it, you can see a lot of these components are being updated. So a benefit of using components is that you should be able to isolate your logic, and you should basically create many child components depending upon their performance, depending upon what they will be performing. Okay. So if they will be performing, for example, a lot of the stateful operations, they should be isolated to a different component, and you should pass children to them, and this will actually stop them from re-rendering multiple times. Okay. Now another benefit of this is also that once you have a lot of these components, it becomes easier for you to debug issues. So for example, if tomorrow I have this issue with progress not updating, it's updating right now, but just imagine that this is not updating, right? Then I know that I have done it in the post layout, and over here I can come and fix it. But if this was a huge file and the use effect has a lot of um, a use effect is doing a lot of other things besides updating the progress, then it would have been very challenging for me to debug it. So this is why creating components is important for usability, but you should also be mindful of how you are reusing these components. Now let's move on to the other side, which is using the logic app wide. So we already touched up on this point in the previous part where I showed you a sample log function and I imported it into the index page, get server side props over here. So we already touched a little bit on this, like why you should use the same logic app wide. However, I will also show you over here like a real world example. So I have this handle awk function over here in server, and this will randomly return as a true or false. So what we can do is, again, we can either go to index.js and we can keep like calling the function, like we can keep importing the function every time every time a component or a page needs it, and that's a very acceptable way of doing it as well. But I want my viewers to be very smart with this. So in Next.js, there is also middleware functions. So in middleware, you can think of middleware as a function that will execute before your page is running. Okay. Now you can specify the middleware to run in every project, like in every page. So if you want your middleware to run in every page, you can basically comment this out. And now this will run before every page. However, if you want to run it only before some pages, so for example, in your app, you have a dashboard page, and you want that in your dashboard page only the authenticated users visit it. Okay. Now you can add a middleware, and you can pass in the URL of that authenticated page. And usually you will, of course, it's not just dashboard. Okay. You will also have settings page or a user profile page. So you can even pass in an array of strings. So an array of parts, basically an array of talks. So over here, you can pass something like dashboard, or you can even pass something like, what was it? User settings, something like that. Okay. In our case, I'm just passing a single string, a single part. So whenever I'm visiting this complete profile page that we're seeing over here, this middleware will run before it. And what it will do is it will basically check if the user is authenticated or not, using a sample gummy function that we created. And now, if the user, for example, if the user is not authenticated, just imagine if the condition is not false. If the condition is not false, then we will redirect it to another URL, basically asking them to sign up. Okay. Now, don't get hung up on the details over here. Just see the concepts that I'm showing to you guys, because uh, I did not write complex logic like Firebase or Superbase over here, because I just wanted to display the concepts, and writing the logic part is getting very simple. So over here, let me just go over it once more. If our handle awk function is like returning, if it is not returning false, and if this condition is being satisfied, so just for an example, just say our user is not authenticated, then this will redirect us. Otherwise, it will load the complete profile page. Now, in a real world scenario, in the complete profile page, we will fetch the user and we will display things accordingly. Okay. So another way of handling this is you can again write a get server side props over here and perform the same operations that you did. But the downside of doing that is you need middlewares in a lot of places, right? So as I already told you before, you might need like a user second page dashboard. Now, how many times do you want to actually repeat the get server side props, right? So what you can do, you can just use the middleware and you can specify the pages, and this will run the same logic for all of these pages. Okay. So now let's see this in action. Now let me visit the complete profile page. So right now we visited it because I think the condition was satisfied. Yep. So this was false. So it did not satisfy this condition. Now if I relog it, see, so I relog it because this was true. So this is how middleware run basically. And if the conditions are, you can basically route the user, you can redirect them, you can even throw another like a 404 error or a 401 error based on some conditions over here. Awesome. Now finally, we saw how you can, so in this part of the video, we saw components, how it can affect the performance. And we also saw how you can use logic app-wide. So basically how you can use middleware. And this was actually building up on the previous part. So we also saw the same folder structure that we created earlier. Okay. Now in the next part, we are focusing more on client side. And I'll show you how you can fetch the data once on the client side, or you can pass it from the server. And then how you can quickly actually use it across different things. Okay. So you can use it across different components without making a mess, basically. So let me load up the example that I created. Yep. So let me first show you the normal way of passing information. So for example, imagine that we have a use effect over here and we are passing some information, like we are basically calling a server, we are getting if the user is authenticated or not. And then we are passing the state to our children over here. Now the normal way of going is you create a children component, you pass the prop to it, and the children component should be able to digest the prop, or it can then again further pass the prop down to another component that will eventually digest it. Okay. So in a simple app, like this is a very simple example, but I think you can notice the issue that I'm trying to surface over here. So over here, you can directly see the issue that first we have a username component, sign up form component that is accepting username. Then it is passing it down again over here. And now this is a simple example, but in a real world example, you may have another child component that will, you will again pass it down. So soon, as you are building your application, you will realize it pretty soon that you have created this huge chain of props passing. Okay. And over here, for example, sign up form, it does not even need the username, right? It's children this form header that actually needs the username, but still it has to accept the username and pass it. So for a simple case like this, it makes sense to basically use username, but in a real world scenario, you should be finding an alternative. So what I do is I rely on some global state managers. So this is something I showed in the earlier part as well. So over here, I have created a context, which is called like create context. And I've wrapped my app with it and initialized it with a default value of a empty username. Okay. So before I show you the way with the before I show you the way with context, let me just show you the normal example. So this is working right now, and this is with the scanner props method. Okay. So we are seeing please enter a details John Smith. So now let me remove this. Let me go to the sign up form. And also let me say remove this over here. Okay. Now if you go back, you see it is empty, right? Now with context, right? We already created a context over here. What I can do is I can pass the context. Okay. So I already have created a context beforehand because this is pretty beginner friendly JavaScript and React over here. So nothing fancy going on. Just I've created a context. And when I click on this button, click me, then I'm updating the context. And you will see that we are not passing any props to sign up form. And for our children over here, like a form header, we are using context over here. So now, if I click on this, you will see we got please enter a vehicle John Smith. Now, what's the difference between the earlier approach and this approach? The main difference is the sign-up form and props. So with context, you have this global state management. So you can store your values in a central place and you can use it everywhere. So in sign-up form, you saw that it did not actually digest username, right? A children of sign-up form was digesting username. So what we did was instead of passing username over here, we basically directly went into the child component, which is form header over here, and we directly basically call the context and display the data. So this already makes the code look very clean, because now if you are maintaining this, you don't have to worry about form header. Like otherwise, if you revisit this code after say 2 months, then you will see a username prop that is being passed somewhere, and it gets a lot messy. You can believe me on that. Now, the another thing before I conclude this session also, which is the context session, is also the hooks. Okay, so in the earlier part I showed you that you can create a hook and you can uh, place the logic that you are reusing every time over here. So hooks is basically a concept that was introduced in React not a long time ago actually. So in hooks was a concept that was brought for the client side React, and not so you cannot use hooks on the server. And what you can do with hooks is that if you have something like a stateful thing, so over here we are fetching data and we are waiting for the data to be fetched. Okay, so these kind of logics, right, where you have a default state of say 0 and then you have then the state updates to 1. For all of these kind of things, I can you hooks is the preferred way of handling them. So without hooks, let me show you what it will look like. So without hooks, you have to write something like constant data, sec data, and then you have to use like use cake. So initially this will score nothing. It will score maybe an empty array. Then you will like another function and you will basically perform a hook operation, right? So over here you will perform something like a fetch operation. So let me go over here. Let me pull up something like a sample API. Yep. Okay. So for example, you have this and now you are fetching it. And then you want to update the sec data. Okay. So let me write a async function over here. And I call something like fetch me data. And then we will see how you can use hooks to basically isolate the logic and basically promote reusability of code. Okay. Now over here we will use sec data and we will update the data and we'll also console logic. Okay. Yep. Let me also run this function. So now if I go back, so this was the index page. If I go back over here, you can see that we are getting some data over here, right? This data basically complete I data equal 1 false. Now, what if like this is fine for a single time use case? Now, what if you want to do something similar in logging page? Now again, you will find yourself repeating the same concepts, right? You will find yourself repeating the same things. And what if there was some other parameter? So this was just a simple call. Now, what if it was you were supposed to pass some headers correct, you were supposed to pass some body icons correct, right? Then you get my point that this will become very hectic and tedious to maintain. Now let me show you how you can do this exact same thing, but with use fetch. Okay. So let me delete this, and over here I can write something like use fetch. Yep. This was use fetch, right? Yep. Yep. So now if I pass in the string over here, right? And that's it actually. Now it's all done. You don't need all of this boilerplate. And now you can just write something like console log data. Now if you go back, you can see that this is being logged into our console. And now if I go back to say login page, I can just copy this. I can go back to login page. I can basically rerun it over here without any issues. And what I can also do is that I can create multiple hooks. So I can create one hook just for use of, and I can create say one hook just for use fetching the data. So this is why it's important to segregate these folders, because as your app grows, you will realize that you will also need multiple contexts, multiple hooks, multiple server functions. So it's best that you can it's best practice to basically create these folders in this structure. So in this final part, we saw state management with context KPI and how we can avoid props, basically how we can avoid the long chain of props. And we also saw how you can uh, fetch the data once, use it everywhere. And also we also saw how you can use hooks and basically to reuse the logic everywhere without actually rewriting it multiple times. And this is something that uh, will help you in long term as you scale your application and also as you start building different applications.